Hello everyone, this is Julia from Craft Room Adventures for Heffy Doodle, and today I'm super excited to share this hot air balloon slimline card with you. I love those cute little squirrels just having the best time in the hot air balloon. So to start my card, I die cut two pieces with the DL Stitched Slimline Trio dies, which is the European size. They are a bit wider than the US size Slimline card, so I needed the added width for my hot air balloon. I'm ink blending the first panel with squeezed lemonade, dried marigold, and picked raspberry for a nice sunset looking sky. And I'm just blending the colors back and forth. Then going back in with the dried marigold and again with the squeezed lemonade, just to get a nice transition. And then I'm also adding a few splatters of the picked raspberry, the dried marigold, as well as some shimmery splatters. Just using a regular paintbrush. Adding the shimmery splatters first, then adding water to the ink, and then going in with dried marigold and then picked raspberry. And with the second panel that I die cut, I also use the Stitched Slopey Joe border dies to create my hill panels, and I'm ink blending those with Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, and Rustic Wilderness. Making sure to leave a nice bright edge at the top, because I always find that adds a nice dimension of on like when the hills are layered. Just blending the colors back and forth. I had a bit too much ink on my brush there, so I just wiped it off and went over the areas again. And now I'm just adding some splatters of the Mowed Lawn and the Rustic Wilderness for a little bit more interest. I die cut all the pieces of the hot air balloon die, and I also added some stitching details with the wood grain texture background die to the basket of the hot air balloon. First, for my center panel, I wanted to match the background, so I ink blended the center of the hot air balloon with picked raspberry and dried marigold layered on top of each other. And then I'm adding some ink blending to the little flags as well, a little bunting, with some squeezed lemonade, just to make sure that it matches with the background. Then I'm starting to ink blend all of the basket pieces. I'm using antique linen tea dye for the basket as well as for the little side panels. And then I'm adding a little bit of vintage photo for some more definition. And then I wanted the remaining pieces to be quite a bit darker, so I'm starting with tea dye, not using the antique linen, then going in with a vintage photo. And that still wasn't dark enough, so I'm also bringing in the walnut stain. For my sentiment, I'm using the Flying High stamp set, and I'm embossing the Sky's the Limit sentiment in white onto black cardstock. I made sure my heat gun is nice and hot before I took it to the paper, and then off camera I'm just trimming the sentiment down to a little strip. Then I stamped the doghouse from Who Let the Dogs Out onto Bristol smooth paper, and I'm coloring that in with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I'm starting with the color 64, then going in with a second layer of the same shade. Just to add a little bit of definition there. And then I'm bringing in the color 68 for the roof as well as for the opening. So I wanted that to be quite a bit darker. And again, I'm using the colorless blender to blend that out. I'm sorry, my hair keeps popping in there. Just blending everything out using a scratch piece of paper off to my right to blend out the color. Adding a second layer of the 68. And then I also stamped out my cute little squirrels from Nuts About You. And I'm using the color 72 as my base layer of color. Then I'm going in with 60, which is like a really red brown. And I'm just showing the coloring of those two, but I ended up using 3 on my card. I'm blending those two shades out with a colorless blender. Again, using a scratch piece of paper to clean off the tip of my blender. Just dragging the pigment out a little bit further into the center so I get a nice transition. Adding a few like flicks of the color 60 for a little bit more red in the bushy tail of my little squirrels. And then I'm using 76 for the little bellies. Then I'm starting to assemble my card. I added 2 of the hill panels. I ink blended 3, but I only ended up using 2. And now it's time to add my hot air balloon. Off camera, I added all the little pieces to the front of the hot air balloon, and now I'm adding the thin little strips. I wanted to make sure that those wouldn't move on me, so because I wanted to add images into the balloon, so I just added a little piece of tape because I got impatient and didn't want to wait for the liquid glue to dry. So I just added a piece of tape on both sides so that won't be going anywhere. And there you can see how the hot air balloon comes together. It's just the center panel that I ink blended, the 2 side panels that are glued to the main balloon piece, and then the little circle at the top and bar at the bottom. And for the basket, I just added the little bar piece at the top, and now the swoopy lines as well as the little bags for decoration. And I just love this hot air balloon. It's so cute and it's really super easy to put together. Heffy Doodle also posted an instructional video on how to assemble it, so you can find all the details there. Then I'm adding the little bunting to the center of the balloon. And now it's time to add my 2 little passengers, which is just so cute. I love those squirrels. So I'm just adding a little bit of liquid glue to the bottom, layering them up how I want them in the hot air balloon, then making sure the arms stick out, and then pressing down, and that finishes off my balloon. Since this is doghouse, but I wanted it to be squirrel home, I just added a little acorn at the top. And off camera, I also die cut the big stitched clouds, the smallest and the second largest size. And I'm just adding them all over the background so that they peek out behind the hot air balloon to add a bit more interest to my background. I just left those completely white because I thought it would be a nice contrast to all the ink blending. I'm adding liquid glue to the entire hot air balloon, but of course you could add some dimensional foam tape to pop it up. I added my sentiment strip at the top with liquid glue as well. I added foam squares to the back of the little squirrel house and to the squirrel. And now I'm just fiddling around with the placement just to make sure it's where I want it. And that finishes off my card for today. I had so much fun building this hot air balloon and just using those cute little squirrels. They look so happy in their hot air balloon flying over their friend's house. I think it was just the cutest thing. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Subscribe to the Heffy Doodle YouTube channel for more crafty inspiration, and I hope I'll see you next time. Until then, have an amazing day.